Tonight I wanna show you off. Yay, baby. Last year, I read a couple books across finance, business, psychology, contemporary fiction, classical literature, and even children literature. These are the ones that educated or helped me in my personal life, either psychologically, financially, or even educatively. Here are the best books of 2025, just 5 of them that left a mark. One of them is actually going to get criticized instead of praised, but it still made it on the list, and I'm going to tell you why. The first book is Beware of Pity by Stefan Zweig. This is actually an honorary mention because I read it in 2026. I finished it in 2026. Stefan Zweig wrote this book in 1939, and he was an Austrian author. He was actually a very popular author. I think one of the most read authors, or like the most read author in the world at a particular time, until the war started, the German war, and he went into exile, which is kind of fitting for this author per se, because he writes about people who cannot or aren't able to deal with their emotions. Zweig actually starts this book by talking about 2 types of pity. There's a kind of pity that actually wants to help and is okay with sitting with the discomfort, and it's okay with going through the situation until the very end. And then there's another kind of pity that just wants the discomfort to stop, that just wants to feel better about themselves. Now, this has mentioned 2 types of pity in this book, and I think that's the whole basis of this book. This follows a young cavalry officer, Anton Hofmiller, and he goes to this city which I would describe as on the outskirts of somewhere. There's not really much going on. It's not really a popular city because like it's a military barrack, you get what I mean? However, he meets this family who is like the richest family in the area. They are assumed to be nobles, and he goes to their house. He wines and dines. They treat him with respect, and he's young, so it gets to his head, and he's like a cavalry officer without like wealth or like fortune to my name. I'm here, and they're treating me so nicely and with respect, that they've gathered me into their fold. And so he gets warm and relaxed with them and decides to ask a young girl for a dance. Turns out this young girl is actually the daughter of the owner of this house. They are called the Kekesvalvas, and the girl is actually crippled, so she burst into tears when he asks her to dance. He didn't know she was crippled because her legs were hidden under the table. This one act of innocence and genuine, I don't know, I would say youthful exuberance, but like in a good way. He was happy, he was calm, he wanted to dance and enjoy the night, turned out to be something that caused someone else pain. And I think at this point in his life, he didn't really have a lot of experience, so I guess he wasn't able to sit with the discomfort of having caused someone else pain or looking bad in front of people. And so he decided to go on visiting the girl, bringing her flowers, starts a friendship with her. This whole situation leads him into a whirlwind and a loop so tangled that he couldn't get out of it until, I guess, disaster fell on everyone, every single person. The lesson from this book is not don't be kind. For me personally, I think it's don't be stupid, because if you can't sit with the discomfort of actually being truthful to someone else, either you're truthful or you let the person go. Be truthful and see what the person has to say with it if you're able to, or seriously let the person go. Take yourself out of their lives, but remaining and building expectations and making promises, false promises that you wouldn't be able to keep, that you're not sincerely with all your heart into it just because you don't want people to be uncomfortable and unhappy with you. I think that just makes things worse, and it's really hurtful to the other person. It's also really disrespectful to the other person and to yourself as well, because the image you're trying to build up will fall. It will crumble like a castle made of sand on a beach with the waves. I don't know what else to say, but don't be stupid. That's what I say. I feel like a lot of people say this book teaches you about kindness and sympathy and empathy, and which one is really true and which one should you show, which one should you give to people, what is really benevolence and pity at the end of the day. For me, in general, I think it's more being truthful and not being stupid. But also, whatever they say. The next book is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, and he was a former FBI hostage negotiator. I think this book has been around since 2016, so I'm going to skip the hype because a lot of people have recommended it, a lot of people have read it. The reason why I bought this book, and the reason why I think most people would buy this book, is because maybe they're trying to negotiate in their life, mostly people that are in corporate, I believe, or mostly people that own businesses or something like that. I don't think anyone who's just living dilly-dally, or like, I don't think I would have bought this at the point in time when I was still working at a cafe because I didn't really need it then. I bought it at the time when I wanted to negotiate my salary with my previous boss. I just thought it would be really something nice to know in corporate, and I did make a lot of tabs in it. Let's go into it. The whole point of this book is that the goal of negotiation is not to win. This seems counterintuitive, but the goal of negotiation should be to get the other person to understand your point of view and to feel understood, so that they feel like they also want to work on the same goal with you. You get the idea. It's not to come and browbeat somebody with your ideas and your negotiation tactics and your arguments, but rather to make them feel like your solution is also their solution. There are tools that he has given on how to do this. So the first thing is mirroring. And it's mirroring like the last three words, the idea of what the person has said back to them. So basically mirroring gives the person this feeling that you're listening to them, you understand what they're saying, and it also lets them speak more, giving you more information at the end of the day. It's also something psychological according to him, because human beings, animals in general, living things in general, we have this desire to be part of a pack, to be like a group. In other words, we have this desire to look the same or feel the same or to feel like one. And so when you mirror someone doing the same thing as them, there's this like affinity or like this part of their brain that switches to like, oh, this person understands me, this person gets me, this person is doing the same thing as me. It seems very caricature-like, but I can get the point of what he's saying, especially if you don't overuse it and you use it at the right time or like in the right place. Number two, let people feel the silence. So when you're talking and you said what you want to say, don't over-explain yourself. Just say what needs to be said and stop. You need to get comfortable with silence. In general, people are uncomfortable with silence. You just have to play the game of who is more uncomfortable. And another one is labeling the other person's emotions. You could label what they haven't really said but you've gotten from them, and then you have to label in a way that doesn't seem like you're giving them instructions, and this in turn also lets them feel like they're being understood, because at the end of the day you're actually listening to them. In order to mirror, in order to label, you're actually listening to the person. One other point that really stuck with me was that no is a good starting point. I know that when you go into negotiations you don't want people to say no to you, but you have to understand that when people are coming to a conversation knowing that they have to negotiate, they already have plans, they already have thoughts, they already have all their arguments up. So they're coming in defensive and ready to argue with you about things. Now, letting them be able to say no and get it all out from the beginning just lets them like release that tension. Just lets them say, like, give you their arguments, and now there's nothing else that they can argue on after that. Now you can talk and be open to saying yes to other things. There are lots of other points in it. Example, the black swan, the DJ voice. There's so many other points in this book that I feel like are really useful. And you don't need to use every single thing, but just knowing them and in a particular situation, being aware like, oh, I think this could work in this particular situation, I think can be useful. It's not necessarily a very easy read, but I think if you sit down with it and just read it well and try to understand what it's saying, it's quite interesting in its own way. End of the story, it's really a book about listening. The tactics in it can be really useful. The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Now stick with me. I know you've already heard of this. I know lots of people are already talking about this, but what really stuck with me from this book, I read it before and then continued after, was that it's not really necessarily about money, and it's not telling you how to make money, and it's not telling you how money runs the world per se. It's more or less talking about your behavior with money and understanding what triggers you when it comes to spending money, and realizing that people's circumstances, where they were born, things surrounding them, people surrounding them, the economic times at that time, wars or certain things like that, really does alter people's brains and how they think about money and how they think about investments and how they think about money in general. At the end of the day, either they think of it as a tool, or they think of it as something to hoard, or they think of it as something that's very ephemeral and would disappear at any point in time. It really does decide a lot of things like that. There's so many golden bits in this book, and I really enjoyed it because I went in thinking, oh, I wouldn't really like this if it's just all about money and how to be rich. But I went into it really enjoying the way that he basically just talked about behavior most of the times towards money. And that was really important. There was also a part where he was talking about how thinking that you have to, I don't know if he was talking about Bill Gates, but what I got from it is like thinking that you have to be Bill Gates. You also have to realize that there's only just one Bill Gates. And so like that would be about 8 billion other people in the world who are not Bill Gates. So the fact that you're not him is okay. Your life is doing quite fine. And to also be him, you have to understand that he was at a privileged position at that time. A lot of people glorify it and be like, oh, he started out from nothing, started out in his basements, did this, did that. You forget who his parents were. You forget that he was in one of the high schools, one of the only high schools at that particular time that actually had a computer. You forget that he had the opportunity to play with these things since he was younger. You forget that he had partners. You forget a lot of things and you don't see how this actually works. There's also Warren Buffett, who you also don't really realize that a lot of things that determine how wealthy he was, apart from his discipline and his behavior towards money and not just selling in panic, was also the fact about the time that he started investing, how long it took him to get there, his personal income, his social, I don't want to say hierarchy, but you get what I mean. All of those things and all. Another thing that I found really interesting was reasonable versus rational, I believe. It's talking about how you don't always have to be reasonable when spending money. I think lots of us, you don't always have to be rational while spending money, because I think lots of us try to be rational, like, oh, I have $50 and then this $50 has to do this, has to do that, has to do that. And after you spend money how you think you rationally should, is that how you reasonably should be spending money? Example, if you should be rational about holding cash, a rational investor would be like, I would never hold cash because it devalues with inflation every single year. Why would I hold cash? I would invest all my money. A reasonable investor would be like, I am perfectly comfortable with having 10,000 euros in cash and knowing that this is something I can access at any time and leaving the others in investment. This is what makes me comfortable. This is what helps me sleep at night. This is what reasonable is. And it's really important to be reasonable when you're dealing with your money, because if you're always only rational, that means you're taking lots of high risks. That means you're going to the extremes. And that means during like a panic, you could be one of the people who like panics easily and sells everything. Take the cash, for example. You have no cash. You invested everything in the stock market. The stock market looks like it's crashing. You will try to cash out at the point in time, because you're like, what if I lose everything? Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about investing because I don't know if you guys are interested in it, but Housel is really good at reminding us that richness is your income, but wealth is what you don't spend. He's also really good at reminding us that financial decisions exist in a specific time, specific emotional state, specific economical period, and just really classifying how the difference of which year and which period you were born in honestly determines how you think about money and perhaps the success that you might have been able to achieve with money. And also likewise, that judging past decisions with today's circumstances is how you will end up going crazy. Don't do that. Don't judge yourself with those things. Now here's the one book I didn't like, Parade by Raquel Cox. I know that Raquel Cox is actually really, really beloved in like the literary space. There are lots of people who like her because of her abstract form of writing. However, I have to say this book I didn't enjoy. This book I cannot recommend to anybody. Cox herself is critically acclaimed. What was the trilogy? The Outline trilogy, I believe, really made her well beloved. It made her like a lot more popular, and people in serious literary circles sort of enjoy her work. So I went into Parade expecting to get it, but I didn't get it. This book in particular is written in a really abstract style where like identities bleed into each other. There's no really strict structure of self, meaning that the characters in the book, there's no really strict structure of like who is who. Their identities and their worlds bleed into each other. So you're reading it not really following one character, not being able to hold onto one character. It's kind of you get a hold of one person, and before you can hold that person, somehow they are slowly disappearing and morphing into a different being. And you get to a point and you're like, am I still reading or talking to the same person? And while I can see what she's trying to do, for me, it wasn't fun at all, because I don't want to be handed a puzzle and then told that, oh, not being able to solve the puzzle and the what do I call it? The confusion is the whole point. I mean, philosophically, I guess you can kind of understand what she's doing. I don't know, it was kind of like too much philosophizing, too much erudition for me, and I didn't enjoy it. It's more or less the story itself didn't grasp me. It didn't catch my attention. It wasn't something I loved. And personally and honestly, if I should say my personal opinion, I feel like people who say they love this book are just saying it because it's a difficult book to read and they just want to look intelligent. Some of them, not all of them, some of them. That's my personal opinion. I did take a lot of notes in the book, so it's not like I didn't read it or like I don't have notes or something like that. So you don't say, oh, Philippa didn't really read it. She just, no, I took notes. And there are really some quotes in the book that I really like. I think I'm going to write like maybe a Substack or maybe a blog post about the quotes that I really like. I think if this book was a poem, I would understand it, because poems, they're really poetic and they're open-ended. There's no like strict definition or like interpretation of what it should be. I would understand. But the fact that it's supposed to be a novella, or I don't know, written as a prose, it doesn't click for me. And so I just want to say that just because a book is loved or an author is acclaimed doesn't mean you have to love their work. And I believe that Cox really did this intentionally. She knows that people aren't going to like this. She also knows that some people are going to like it. So I guess it's open for interpretations and reviews, so to say. I tried it. I didn't like the book. I don't see the point and I can't recommend it. However, there are some essence captured and really descriptive quotes or lines in this book that I personally liked, and I think I will be sharing that quite soon on my Substack. So watch out. And lastly, we have Hunchback by Sao Ichikawa. This one is really short and it's quite interesting to read. Sao Ichikawa lives in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan. Her best-selling debut novel, Hunchback, won the 128th Bungakukai Prize for New Writers and the 169th Akutagawa Prize. Now, the Akutagawa Prize, I know is like a really prestigious one. All of them are prestigious. I'm just saying, like, this is really prestigious. She is the first author with a physical disability to receive the Akutagawa Prize, Japan's premier literary award. She has congenital myopathy and uses a ventilator and electrical wheelchair. Now, this is the author. This book is really bold. It's unflinching. It's genuine. It's sharp. It's mature. And it's undiluted. It talks about, or rather, it gives you a perspective into the life of a disabled woman who is unapologetically herself, who the way she lives her life and the constraints that she's had to live in is something that you cannot understand unless you've actually lived in her body or experienced her emotions and her thought from within her. And I feel like having the same congenital disorder that the character in this book has, the author was really able to express those feelings to a lifelike extent, in order that the person who is reading it can really see or like feel and understand even the minutiae of the daily struggles that she has to go through. Now, someone said here that it is operationally funny, unflinching, and merciless. I don't know about funny, but it's definitely unflinching and merciless. Shaka in the book, the character herself, she doesn't want your sympathy. She doesn't want your pity. She doesn't want you to feel for her per se. She's perfectly alright. She just has her frustrations, her emotions, her distress, her desires, her sexuality, her needs, and she's not afraid of speaking them out. She doesn't want to be infantilized. She doesn't want to be treated like an egg. She just wants to be like everybody else. Which at the same point, I guess, like if you've also read the book Beware of Pity, it also like really affects the way you would read this book, because then you think to yourself, am I pitying this character or am I understanding the character herself? Now, Shaka lives in a care home which she owns because she's a very rich lady. Okay. Anyway, there's this other guy, his name is Tanaka. He works there, and Shaka wants to experience everything that we take for granted. She wants to be able to have sex. She wants to be able to get pregnant. She wants to be able to have an abortion. She doesn't want to do all these things because like it's part of what other people, like it's part of what she wants to experience, what other people are experiencing in life. No, she just wants to do it because she wants to do it. It's not part of like she feels like, oh, I'm a woman and I would also like to have a family of my own one day. No, she's just like, I want to do it because I want to do it. It's something that I desire to do, and I'm not doing it because of social conformity or because I feel left out completely from society. It's more or less like, this is something that I desire. This is something that I imagine how would it be to experience it. And so she strikes a deal with Tanaka. The ending is surprising. There's like a plot twist that takes you by surprise. But then it just really shows us how someone who was sick wanted to be someone else. Someone who was not sick envied the person who was sick for something they have. Now, there's nobody's life that's completely perfect, but Shaka herself in the book showed me how there are certain things that we take for granted. The opportunity to be able to lift a book up without feeling the weight on your spine. The opportunity to be able to read hard book covers. And there's something that she mentioned in the book about readers in particular, because she herself loves to read, and she was talking about the people who say reading anything other than book, like hardcover backs are like, it's not so literary, it doesn't look so scholarly, and they're not taking into account that there are certain people who can no longer hold a book, who they don't need your pity, by the way. This is not something for you to pity them for. The fact that you can hold a book and carry a book and walk around is a privilege in itself that you would never really understand, just like passport privileges. Anyway, that you would never really understand unless you get to live it yourself. And I guess there's so many things that she showed me from her own perspective that I had completely taken for granted. Normal things that I was able to do that I didn't really think about it every single time. And it shows that when society is built for you, when society is made for people like you, when society is made for able-bodied people, even if not everybody in society is able-bodied, we are so freaking privileged. It's kind of like a white privilege of its own. And you never really understand it unless you get to be in the other person's shoes. And so the next thing I want you to do is whenever you see someone else who is having a difficult time, maybe they have some disability or some disorder, treat them as a complete autonomous human, but ask them for their opinions. Don't try to pity them and then try to impose on them like, oh, I can see that you need this. Ask them, do you need help with this? Ask them for their own personal opinions. Anyway, Shaka, thank you so much for being so bold. I enjoyed reading about you. So that's 5 books. One about the lies hidden behind kindness. One that tells us that listening is actually a superpower. One that teaches us that our relationship with money is actually a relationship with ourselves and it determines everything about how we become financially stable or not. One that confused the hell out of me and made me so annoyed, but still made me think anyway. And then a tiny Japanese novella that totally dismantled some of my beliefs and helped me see a little bit clearly into the world of someone who lives differently from me on this tiny blob that we call Earth. All that being said, here's a challenge I want to leave you with. Pick a book this year that makes you uncomfortable. Not a book outside your normal genre, not a different popular genre, not a longer book, but something that dismantles a belief that you already firmly believe in. It could be something about religion, something about race, something about people, money, how the world works, something about yourself, something about society. It could be anything, mythology. Read the whole thing, even if it's disturbing, even if it's frustrating. And when you're done, just sit with it. Now, you don't necessarily have to agree with the book. You don't even necessarily have to completely understand the book. But I want you to read it to the end and sit with it. And at the end of the day, whatever decision you come to, I guess it's a valid decision for you. I'm not there to police how you see a book or how you don't see a book. But the main goal is that we should at least reach out and experience this world that really questions us and our own firm beliefs, not just something that we think, oh, I could, argue with it a little bit, something that really questions something you believe in. The books I read last year weren't always books that I enjoyed. These are just 5 of the books that I read. Sometimes there was friction, sometimes there was annoyance, sometimes there was a lack of understanding, sometimes there was joy, there was comfort, there was discomfort, there was melancholy, there were a lot of other feelings, but at the end of the day, the ones that really spoke to me and the ones that let me sit with my discomfort were the ones that I really enjoyed the most. Guys, I'm gonna see you later. I think I have so many things to do now that I have to go and it's getting late. See you next time. Love you. Don't forget to like and subscribe and check out my other social media platforms. And also thank you to the people who have subscribed so far. I believe, how many are we? 5? Thank you so much and see you next time.